Welcome back, Focus Learners, to another explainer. Today, we're tackling something absolutely crucial. We're looking at the ultimate goal for any serious student or professional out there, which is transforming those chaotic, passive notes into a powerful, structured web of knowledge. If you've ever stared down a massive mountain of reading material and thought, there is literally no way I'm going to remember any of this, well, you're in the right place. We are going to walk through a proven blueprint to completely rebuild your brain's architecture.
But right off the bat, let's start with a question that might hit a little close to home. Why do so many mind maps fail? I mean, be honest here. Have you ever sat down, super motivated to build a mind map, only to end up with this chaotic, confusing web of words, a bunch of cross lines, and a massive headache? And then, you just kind of give up and go right back to writing those regular linear bullet points? Listen, if that's you, you're definitely not alone. Pretty much everyone struggles with this at first.
Learning expert Justin Sung actually hits the nail on the head as to why this happens. He says, most people just write notes linearly. Knowledge isn't linear. You want to stop and think about how to illustrate groups and relationships. So that early frustration you're feeling, totally normal. It happens because we're trying to force complex, multidimensional concepts into passive, linear notes. Your brain just doesn't work that way, so your study method shouldn't either.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. First, the mental laundry. Then, the GRINDE framework. After that, beginner mistakes. And finally, the furniture solution. Let's dive in.
Section 1. The mental laundry, moving from juggle mode to organizing mode.
So we're moving into phase 2 of learning here. Phase 1 is just gathering the information, but phase 2 is where the magic happens. It's about actively structuring it. You can't just act like a human photocopier. Think back to a classic, super relatable middle school analogy. When you're just taking notes word for word, you're basically in juggle mode. It's like trying to hold this massive, overflowing pile of loose laundry in your arms. Inevitably, socks and shirts are going to fall on the floor, right? You're going to forget things. What we actually want is organizing mode. That's like actively folding that laundry and placing it neatly into a sock drawer. You know exactly where everything is because you actively put it there.
Section 2. The GRINDE framework, Justin Sung's 6-step checklist for cognitive mapping.
So how exactly do we build that mental sock drawer? We use learning coach Justin Sung's GRINDE framework. It stands for grouped, reflective, interconnected, nonverbal, directional, and emphasized. If your notes are hitting all 6 of these, you are engaging in highly active, incredibly efficient learning. Let's break down each letter really quickly so you can start building these schemas.
First up is G for grouped. This just means arranging related ideas into distinct spatial conceptual boxes or chunks. Grouping massively simplifies things for your brain. Think about it. Trying to build a house using just a bunch of loose leaves is impossible. But if you gather those scattered leaves into sturdy branches, which represent your conceptual groups, you suddenly have a really strong foundation to build on.
Next up, we have R for reflective and I for interconnected. Your nap has to be reflective, meaning the physical layout actually mirrors your own internal real-time thought processes, not just whatever the textbook layout is. And it has to be interconnected. You need explicit visual pathways linking different groups together. Doing this intentionally prevents you from ending up with isolated pools of knowledge, and it clearly shows how different ideas interact with each other. Then we have nonverbal and directional. For this, you really want to prioritize spatial configurations, symbols, and clear arrows to map out cause and effect sequences. Treating written words as just a secondary tool forces a much deeper level of cognitive retention. You're no longer just passively reading, you're creating this self-documenting, highly logical flow of information.
And finally, E is for emphasized. This means using visual weights, distinct colors, or maybe some bold lines to force a hierarchy of importance among your concepts. Actively sitting there and deciding which concept is the main idea and which is just a supporting detail, that is quite literally one of the highest forms of active learning you can do.
Section 3. Beginner mistakes. Navigating the traps of cognitive overload.
Now, as you start applying this framework, you're going to hit some roadblocks. But please remember, making these mistakes is actually proof that your brain is working hard. It is all part of the process. The first really common trap is segmental mapping. This happens when you get tunnel vision. You flesh out one tiny area of your mind map in extreme detail, but you totally neglect the big picture. You end up with one massively heavy, detailed branch, and the rest of the map is just kind of empty. It creates a very unbalanced understanding of whatever you're studying.
Trap number 2 is spiderwebbing.
This is when you create this messy, chaotic web of crossed lines everywhere. And why does this happen? Well, it happens because you delayed rearranging your map. You built out the whole structure, suddenly realized concept A relates to concept Z, and you just drew a huge, ugly line cutting across the whole page.
Trap number 3 is islands. These are those really dense, highly developed groups of information that honestly look great on their own, but they stay completely disconnected from the rest of the map. Islands compartmentalize your understanding. They completely block that fluid, big-picture problem-solving that you absolutely need if you want true mastery of a subject.
Section 4. The furniture solution. How to mechanically build your map.
So how do we actually avoid segmental mapping, spider webs, and islands? Well, we use a mechanical approach, which brings us to another fantastic, relatable analogy, the furniture solution. Building a cognitive mind map is exactly like moving furniture into a brand new bedroom. You wouldn't just dump your bed, your dresser, and your desk into the dead center of the room and then try to organize it all at once, right? That would be totally overwhelming. Instead, you place one concept, one piece of furniture. Then you step back and look at the whole room. Then you rearrange it immediately to make sure it fits with the overall flow, before you even think about adding the next piece.
The absolute secret to making this work is to zoom in and zoom out frequently. You zoom in to add those fine details, sure, but you have to constantly zoom out to check the big picture. Doing this gives you these frequent, built-in opportunities to restructure and clean up your map way before it turns into some messy, overwhelming spiderweb.
Section 5. The payoff of effort. Why cognitive discomfort equals true learning.
By now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, this sounds like a lot of work. And you know what? You're absolutely right. But validating that discomfort is exactly the point. In one of the sources we looked at, top-performing student Archer used this perfect analogy. He said, I actually know this effort, and this discomfort is a good thing. You want to lift like 50 kilograms, which is actually going to make you get better. Look, if you go to the gym and lift a tiny 5-kilogram weight every day, you aren't going to grow. The exact same rule applies to your brain. That messy cognitive effort, the frustration of grouping, rearranging, and organizing, that is the exact place where true learning and memory consolidation actually happen.
So, I'm going to leave you this final provocative thought. Are you going to embrace the messy effort? The next time you sit down for a study session, I challenge you to completely ditch those passive, linear notes. Grab a blank page, start folding your mental laundry, and tackle your learning with the GRINDE framework. It's not going to be easy at first, for sure, but the mastery you achieve, it's going to be absolutely worth it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy learning.